Tolentino and Gil Puyat knows how this works. So let's begin by asking her views on today's Senate and the position of the current Nacionalista Party chief. Madam Senator, welcome to the show. Well, let me ask you, first of all, right now you're looking at Manny Villar, who is head of the Nacionalista Party and is
right.
Senate President, supposed stepping stone to the presidency.
That's right.
First of all, what are your views concerning his having become the head of the Nacionalista Party, and second of all, his current standing as the Senate President?
Actually, it was the Laurels who invited Villar to head the party. And since the party was not really in disarray, but was quiet at the time, they didn't have much say, the whole party itself. So Villar became the president of the Nacionalista Party through the workings of the Laurels.
Now, in your book, you had pointed out that even when you were being considered for senator in the 60s and throughout your long experience with both the NPs and the LPs, you had always felt strongly that whatever decisions are made by a party should engage the entire membership. So, as an elder of the Nacionalista Party, have you been consulted, and how do you think the way forward should be for...
Very seldom that I was... actually, I was second in rank in the party when that happened, but I was not consulted. And the Laurels talked with Villar and made him the president of the party. And there was a group of nationalistas who didn't seem to like this because they were not consulted. But I don't think it was time to create trouble within the party. And since Villar was ready to take over, he has the means to support the party. And it seems to me that the voice of the Laurels in the Nacionalista Party is a strong voice. And so Villar became the party president.
But moving forward, are you advocating, for example, a party convention so that the grassroots can be...
At this time now, I think it should be Villar who should call this. Because there was nothing that the party could do when he became automatically the president of the party through the workings of the Laurels. But there was no national convention on this. It was just an agreement with the Laurels and Villar.
Now, in terms of his having secured the presidency of the Senate, and as we've seen periodically in the news, much of the news seems to revolve about who is plotting to ease him out and who is going to stick by him. You were involved in many of these, in many similar sort of dealings in the 60s.
Yes.
Is this really part of the Senate tradition, this sort of backbiting that's going on, or is this a more recent phenomenon that we have to
each
deal
one
with?
who aims to be head of the party or to become president of the Senate, they have their own maneuvers in order to get those positions they like. For example, there were 4 of us, Puyat, Ganson, myself, and Jokno, who banded together to form the 13th vote to control the party. And this was with the help of the Liberals, and we were nationalistas.
But this is usually people were saying that whatever happened to party discipline, why don't people vote according to party lines? There are many who are advocating a return to the two-party system, and yet your experience in the Senate was under the two-party system. What kept you from simply following the party line and voting for whoever was the party candidate?
There are rules. For example, the party president must also be the Senate president. And in the case of Puyat, he was not the party president then, but he was the Senate president. So that was an unusual case. So we moved to put these 2 posts together. That's why the 4 of us, Jokno, Ganson, Puyat, and myself, got together to put the power of the party president together with his Senate presidency power.
Okay, so in many ways what you actually worked for was to restore the balance that should take place in a two-party system. Today, where we have a multi-party system, there seems to be a problem in reconciling the the orientation of the Senate, which is only supposed to have majority and minority,
Correct.
and this sort of complicated thing. So how do you see it moving forward?
I think it's very confusing for people to know who to follow in terms of principles, in terms of what we stand for. We just feel that we should vote for this person, that's all. We vote for another, and there are so many candidates.
Do you think it's actually a more democratic system, or are you advocating some sort of return to the old rules to make things more rational? How do
I
you
think the
view it?
old rules keeps the party in place and properly directed, because if there are so many combined or groups that compose this, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to act as a party president. You cannot represent the party anymore because there are others who stand differently.
Now, in your experience, when you were in the Senate, when the time came to court your vote for whether for a law or even for the reorganization of the whoever headed the chamber,
Yes.
what were the incentives that were dangled before you and your fellow senators?
We actually analyze the law. We just don't say you vote for me because I need your vote. The senators work very seriously then. I don't know now because I'm not part of the Senate. But definitely we are very serious when it comes to lawmaking. We're very tedious about it.
No, there was an interesting part in your book where, you often hear many of our elders saying that, the previous Senates, they were a little more statesmanlike, and this is a great compliment to your generation. They took their work seriously. But you are very proud of, for example, of having thrown your support behind the candidacy of Joseph Estrada for the Senate after EDSA. And according to your book, many of your friends and fellow politicians were quite surprised by. Would you like to explain why you were so willing to throw your support behind him?
Well, Joseph Estrada has been I think as a politician, he's a good politician, number one. And he has done his work. He's not an idle member of Congress. He's qualified. Many think that he's not, but he is. He's very qualified. So I have always supported Joseph Estrada.
This is an interesting observation on your part. All right, what to you makes for a qualified legislator? We're not even talking about the executive positions here. We're talking about the
One,
Senate.
he must have experience. Second, he really works for the country and not for personal reasons. And thirdly, that he's intelligent enough to know which is the real, what should be done so that his vote is valuable.
And according to all of these standards, you felt that Mr. Estrada met all these criteria.
Yes.
Now, you also at the same time became known for being quite an oppositionist after EDSA, even though you had fought the dictatorship quite strenuously. You opposed the ratification of the 1987 Constitution. You joined the Grand Alliance for Democracy, which saw you in many ways joining ranks with some of the people you had opposed, both in the Batasan Pambansahan. And
Yeah.
how did this happen? I mean, I remember at that time many people were asking what happened to her. Why was she suddenly going in this direction?
What do you mean by that?
Well, because you had consistently fought the Marcoses. You had stood for the restoration of democracy, and yet when that restoration came, you then, part of it was joining ranks with many veterans of the Marcos regime in the Grand Alliance for Democracy, again in opposing the 1987 Constitution, and then in generally calling for the resignation of President Aquino. What were your reasons for all of these?
Firstly, I've been watching how Marcos was running the country. And I noticed